Okay, let's get started. Indoor gardening. This time of year, and particularly today through much of the United States, it sounds like a really good idea. We've had just so much cold weather, snow in Louisiana. Um, it's just incredible. So you might be thinking about a greenhouse, but there are lots of factors that go into deciding on the type and the size and what equipment you'll need to make it work for your situation. And I'm gonna just get my face off of here so you can concentrate on the slides. Okay. A greenhouse can provide a variety of gardening solutions and possibilities. Depending on how it's constructed and accessorized, it can function as a place to get a jump start on seedlings to a year-round environment for tropical plants in cold weather. Maybe you want a place to protect frost-sensitive plants during the winter months. Has anybody ever had a situation like this cartoon where you've got a whole kitchen counter or bathroom filled with plants? A greenhouse can solve that problem. So why get a greenhouse? You might want space where you can comfortably garden in miserable days or harvest throughout the year. A greenhouse is a great place to grow cool season greens, chard, kale, lettuces, and tomatoes and peppers are also possible with enough heat and light. Being able to grow crops all year round and extending the growing season, raising seedlings and overwintering tender plants are all great reasons to have a greenhouse. These are all pictures of greenhouses in January. You can see all of the life going on. And pets like to hang out there too. If you're propagating, starting seeds, or hybridizing, a greenhouse can be set up to meet the precise conditions needed for success. The photo on the right is from Richard Schreiber. He's the president of the Hobby Greenhouse Association. And he sent me these. This is an astonished collection of succulents that he grows. And these are some of his lithops. And they need warm temperatures and absolutely dry in the wintertime. And this is what his greenhouse looks like in the winter down below here. So you can see that the lithops would not survive outside. On the left is somebody who sent us tomato starts in Maine in May. And she's just got such a head start on the growing season. Maine is far north, and so they've got a shorter growing season. And it's cold, so these are going to probably be a few weeks before they can be set out. But look at, she's just ready to hit the road running. A greenhouse can serve as additional living space. They're perfect for taking advantage of gorgeous sunshine, even in the coldest weather. So, as you can see, the world of greenhouses covers a vast array of styles and uses. Today, we're going to look at the decisions that you need to make before you begin the purchasing or building process for your greenhouse. We'll cover how to establish the type and the location and the use that you want for your greenhouse. We're going to cover the greenhouse structure, the foundation, the framing, the glazing, and the floor, and then utilities, what utilities you need to have for your greenhouse to be successful. So after we've got the greenhouse built and the structure done, then we need to bring it to life, be able to put in plants, have places for them to sit, to grow, what kind of ventilation and lighting and tools do you need, the maintenance that you're going to need to be doing. And then we've got 3 interesting case studies of 3 very different types of greenhouses that I think you'll find interesting. There's a lot to cover, and we don't have time to go into great detail on all the topics. But what we cover today will get you started on the decisions that you need to make. The 2 resources that I used mainly in getting this presentation ready. The first one, Greenhouses for Homeowners and Gardeners. And it is a 200-page downloadable PDF from Cornell University eCommons Library. It was published in 2000, so it's a little bit dated, but it has just all of the information that you're going to need to make your greenhouse decisions. The other one is visually more interesting, and that's Greenhouse Management Online from the University of Arkansas. Really good in-depth information. And again, you can click on, go to the link and get basically a college course level on how to do greenhousing. And I also want to do a special thank you to Rick and Debbie Warner, whose family owned Sturdy Built Greenhouses for 50 years. Rick has designed hobby greenhouses for all applications and climates imaginable in all 50 states, and he was kind enough to provide expertise for this presentation. So let's get to what we need to decide to select the type of greenhouse. We're going to answer 6 questions. The first one is, who will use your greenhouse? Is it going to basically just be for your plants and that's all? Do you want to have plants and people? So maybe a seating area in your greenhouse. And then maybe you want to have just a greenhouse mostly for people with some greenery thrown in. All of these take different types of buildings and accommodations. How much of the year do you plan to use your greenhouse? A season extender greenhouse is used primarily to lengthen the outdoor growing season. It generally contains limited supplemental heat and perhaps a small electric heater to keep the temperature above freezing on cold nights. You can provide fresh vegetables and fruits on your own if you want to propagate plants for year-round protection. And then a hothouse for tropical plants is ideal for orchids, tubers, begonias, and succulents. What's your winter weather like? Another big consideration to take in fact. Now, this greenhouse covered in the snow is in Alaska. So this is probably not a rare occasion for them. This is the greenhouse over here, and that's in what it looks like in the summertime. But depending on the snow load, you kind of need to figure out what's going to be the best structure for your greenhouse because they take a lot of beating. Snow can be very, very heavy. Wind is also a factor to consider. The picture here on the right is a picture of a greenhouse in Norway after Cyclone Dagmar went through, and there were wind speeds of 70 to 100 miles per hour. The picture on the left is a greenhouse after Hurricane Michael had blown through the area, and that had wind speeds up to 160 miles. So you kind of need to figure out what you're going to be expecting and plan accordingly. You should seal all openings so the wind can't infiltrate. Your roof should be a lower pitch, and stay away from trees when you site your greenhouse if you have a heavy wind area. What's important to you? Is it the longevity of the greenhouse, the durability, customization? You know, what's it look like? What kind of special things are you going to be doing in it? What's the price and what's the speed of delivery? All of these things affect each other. So the greenhouse on the left is a kit greenhouse, and it's available online for less than $200. You don't need a foundation. It's easy to set up. It comes, you put it up, and there you go. On the right, we have the other end of the spectrum, a custom greenhouse with a concrete foundation, raised beds, heating, ventilation, lighting, hanging space. This basically is a do everything greenhouse, everything everywhere all at once right here. It is more than $200, just so you know. Okay, factors. What size? Do you want a big greenhouse, but you have a small budget? That's going to make a difference as to what greenhouse you choose. What's your structural material? Initial price versus longevity. You can go inexpensive, but it's not going to last as long as some, say, aluminum or wood greenhouse. Glazing material also has a longevity factor, an insulation factor, transparency factor, lots of things to consider. You need to think about utilities, heat and water access, and the systems. If you have a greenhouse that is far away from your house, the heat and water sources, it takes money to get those there, electricity and water. You also need places to put your plants. So you need benches, shade cloth, automation in the greenhouse, and then the customization that we talked about. So all of these factors go into your budget. Greenhouse styles come in so many different designs and materials, but there are a few standard styles. The gable end here on the bottom left, and also this one up here are both gable end. The hoop house here, this is, I just took this picture in December from a working farm, and they've got basically, it's kind of like a Gothic arch greenhouse, and with a space in front to work that's not necessarily closed up. Lean-tos are really, a shed roof lean-to are all very common. The dome greenhouse is not as common, but it's a really good, it's sturdy and really withstands wind well. So something you might want to think about. So there are advantages to each of these different styles. Attached greenhouses have easy access to a living space or a barn, but it's right there and easy to get to. It can increase the insulation value of your house if you on that wall. They're lower cost to build. You basically only have one less wall. And then the ease of connecting your electricity and water because it's right there. Some of the disadvantages are the size limitations. Your house is only so big and the greenhouse will only fit on certain parts of it. Greenhouses are damp, so having that dampness right next to your house, you want to make sure you've got a good vapor barrier. You can have overheating issues in the summertime when the greenhouse really heats up. And then you've got dirt and insects very close to your house. So you need to just make sure that you've got things well separated. Freestanding greenhouses. There's so many styles to choose from. They're easy to locate, they're not tied to the house, so you can put them pretty much anywhere. And some of them can even be expanded, like you build a hoop house and you want it bigger, you can just add more. Some of the disadvantages is there can be difficult to get to in bad weather. So think about our Alaska greenhouse in the snow. You don't want to have to walk and clear pathways through 15 feet of snow to get to your greenhouse. Utilities need to be brought to the greenhouse, so that again adds money, and they're less energy efficient. The last one I want to talk about is a pit style or Wallapini greenhouse. These are really fascinating to me, and I wish I had room to build one. The advantages are that they're a more constant temperature, basically 4 feet below ground level. The temperature is always 50 to 60 degrees, even if the weather above the ground is constant. So that's a temperature constant, it's called. They keep energy costs down in the wintertime because they're keeping the greenhouse warmer. They also created very good aerodynamic structure suitable for places that experience high winds. Some of the disadvantages are there can be more expensive to build. You've got to dig out a lot. The soil around the pit has to be supported by concrete walls or some type of retaining wall. Draining is an issue. You want to make sure that you've got good drainage so you don't end up with a swimming pool instead of a greenhouse. Then we have greenhouse temperatures. I'm showing you this picture because this is a greenhouse in Vienna, Austria that has accommodations for all 3 temperatures. The warm house is in the middle, and then the cool and the hot houses are on the end. So cool house is perfect for gardeners who live in mild climates and want to overwinter plants and seeds in the spring, start seeds in the springs. A warm greenhouse is the type of greenhouse that basically for gardeners who live in a cold climate and want to grow things like orchids and citrus trees, but don't necessarily need the tropical temperatures. And then there's the hothouse, and that is designed for gardeners who want to grow tropical plants and require very specific humidity. So you may want to have kind of a mixed greenhouse, and one of the things you can do if you've got space, you can basically make a temporary wall or curtains with plastic and kind of work in one area to make that special place hotter, more heat, and the rest of the greenhouse can be cooler. So you can kind of section off a greenhouse and work that way. Okay, another decision you need to make is to determine the location. Number one, you want the most sun possible, and you need to look at the angle of the sun throughout the year. The orientation of the longest wall of the greenhouse should be toward the south and the sunlight. Take a look at trees. Are there any nearby? Sometimes a deciduous tree can help shade the greenhouse in the hottest summer months, but it can also decrease the amount of sunlight reaching the greenhouse by up to 50%, even when there are no leaves. Another thing to think about with trees is what's your wind load, and are they likely to be dropping branches or dropping the trees themselves? You need access to utilities. How are you going to get the utilities to your greenhouse? The topography, flat is better. Draining away from the greenhouse is important. You can do a greenhouse on a slope very successfully, but it needs retaining walls. These are just all things to think about. And then the last thing is that your HOA and your local government may have opinions on to exactly what you can build, where you can build it, and what it looks like. So the long wall should be facing the south or southeast. And this diagram shows basically what the angle of the sun and difference between the summer and the winter. And so depending on the angle of the sun, you're going to get shade in your greenhouse at different times of the year. And a shaded location can work for shade-loving plants, but it's not optimal for growing a lot of different kinds of plants. If you can only do southeast, that's a really good situation because the east basically is a nice, warm, gentle morning light that warms things up. Facing west gets a little too intense, so it's not recommended. Okay, don't freak out on this one. This is a lot of information. Basically, this is a sample of what you can get by going to how to site a greenhouse to receive the most sun. And again, that will be in your resources page. And it basically, you can, from the University of Oregon, they have a website where you can say, this is my exact location, and I want to know what angle the sun is going to be throughout the year at different times of the day. And so you can see, like I've circled right here, at 2 p.m. on June, this is going to be angle of the sun. In April, it's going to be here, and so forth and so on, all the way down to the bottom in December. Through several steps, you can basically plot where the shade from your house is going to be, where the shade from your tree is going to be, and you can look and figure out the best place for your greenhouse. Once you've learned to diagram your potential site, you should be able to assess any location in just a few hours. And it may seem like a lot of work, but it's much cheaper than building a greenhouse where it receives inadequate light, and it's much quicker than waiting all year to chart the shadows through the seasons. Okay, flat level ground is optimal, but sometimes you just don't have that space. So look at B, deciduous trees all the way around. You may have to supplement with light or figure out what kind of plants are going to work in this kind of situation. Again, here, you've got a little bit of a slope, big slope here, another slope here. These can all work. And look at the beautiful sunlight on this one in D, just great. So determining the location and the topography is all really a place to start before you think, oh, this is the kind of greenhouse I'm going to get. Okay, once you decide what kind of greenhouse you're going to get, you're going to factor in what kind of foundation you're going to need. The first thing I'm going to say is check your measurements. So a lot of times you can get a greenhouse kit and they will say something like, oh, this is a 7x9 greenhouse. So you think, great, I'll order my kit, but I'm going to build my foundation. Always look at your documentation beforehand, because a 7x9 greenhouse is just kind of a generic size, and it actually could be 7 feet 3 inches by 8 feet 11 inches. And if you built your greenhouse foundation to the wrong size, you're going to be in a mess. Make sure you grade so the water is draining away from the greenhouse, provide access for utilities. So on the left, we've got a pipe foundation basically for a hoop house. This is a treated timber foundation, also works really well and fairly inexpensive to build. Poured concrete is going to last longer, obviously, but it's more expensive. And then if you're on a slope, you're going to need to make a retaining wall. Again, check your measurements before you start your foundation. The framing materials that you're going to use, we've got 4 different kinds we're going to talk about. The PVC pipe is very lightweight. It's really easy for do-it-yourselfers. It's obviously not as sturdy, but if you need to get in or you want to get into greenhouse gardening and you don't want to invest a lot of money, getting a plan and building your own PVC greenhouse is a really good way to go. Aluminum is very, very popular. It's lightweight, it's durable. You can have it powder coated in several different colors. It's fairly sturdy. It's not something that you can configure and construct yourself, but it does come in lots of different kits. Now, wood is something that you can basically do yourself, or you can have kits. It offers the best insulation of all the greenhouse materials. Wood does not conduct heat well. It's popular with do-it-yourself. I found this greenhouse plan online from Harkey Shop, and I think it's adorable. And it's easy to customize. Galvanized steel, very, very strong. You've got to galvanize it so it doesn't rust. And it's the most popular for hoop and Gothic style greenhouses. Okay, we got the foundation, we've got the frame. What are we going to put in it? Glazing materials. Glass is the traditional greenhouse material. It used to come in just small, like 16 by 20 size panes. Now they come much bigger. You have the best clarity in glass, and it can be double glazed, so you get more insulation. The light transmittance of glass is 85 to 90%, and greenhouse glass can come in extra strength, that is thicker glass, so it's a little bit stronger. If you've got a glass roof, it's got to be tempered because you don't want things breaking and having shards raining down on you. Polycarbonate is another super popular greenhouse glazing material. It provides excellent light. The light transmission is 83%. It diffuses the light more than glass does, so you have less chance of hot spots and burning your plants. It's got great tensile strength. It's 200 times tensile strength higher than glass. And it comes in so many different variations. If you look over here, it's a twin wall is typical, but you've got twin wall, triple wall, lots of different air spaces. So greenhouse polycarbonate is an excellent choice. One of the things, the configurations that I like the best is glass on the sides, so you can see out with a view like that, who wouldn't want to, and then polycarbonate on the roof. So basically you've got diffuse light, and it's a little more protected against hail, flying branches, things like that. Okay, fiberglass is another popular material, not quite as popular as it used to be, but it's still a viable option. It's translucent. You need to have it reinforced, and basically if you can have it treated with polycarbon, I'm sorry, have it treated so that it's resistant to UV radiation is optimum. You do get a diffuse light, but it does yellow after a while. Plastic is another really popular greenhouse glazing. It's inexpensive. You do need to replace it every 3 to 5 years, and you need to get horticultural grade, and that can be treated both on the inside and the outside for UV protection and R value. And you can even get bubble wrap. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about keeping the heat in your greenhouse. This is another chart that's available in that online course, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but it gives you the basically light transmittance, how long it's expected to last, estimated cost per square foot. But let's look at the U factor and the R factor. R value is a measure of a material's thermal resistance, while U value measures thermal conductivity. So a U value is a measure of how well a material conducts heat, essentially indicating how quickly heat transfers through a building element like a wall, a roof, or a floor, or the glazing. The lower the U value, the better the insulating properties of that element. So you want a low U value and a higher R value. Okay, you've got your glazing. Now you've got to have a floor. We're going to talk about three different kinds very quickly. What your floor is doing is it's providing a weed barrier. It's providing warmth, humidity in the summertime, and a clean surface to work and walk on. Concrete flooring is easy to clean. It reduces maintenance a lot. If you pour it properly, a concrete floor should also assist with draining away excess water after irrigation. That's really important. You can also have radiant heat installed in a concrete floor, which is a lovely way to heat a greenhouse. Pavers, again, usually made out of concrete. They're easy to clean. They're long lasting. It's a good do-it-yourself project. And there's such a wide variety of color and texture available. You can really make a statement with your pavers. Bricks are made out of clay, and they come in all different styles and sizes. This particular one is made from antique bricks in Michigan, from a site in Michigan. And the colors are just amazing. Really good preventing slips factor on these kinds of floors, which is something, again, that you want to think about. Gravel is another very popular one. It's inexpensive to do. It's long lasting. There are varieties in color and texture, so you can get gravel that has lots of different colors and warm tones or just gray. It's also a good do-it-yourself material. Weed cloth is another one, and you want to put weed cloth, you can put it over gravel, or if you want gravel, you can put the weed cloth underneath it to keep weeds coming up. So this is another option. It's smooth surface, easy to clean, it's inexpensive, and again, a do-it-yourself option. Wood chips are not real common, but if you're just getting in on the ground floor and you just want to get something going, it's an option. It's going to keep your mud down. If you put weed cloth underneath it, you're going to keep weeds out, and it smells really good when you first put it in. So you got it built and you're ready to put plants in. It's time to get ready to figure out how your plants are going to live in your greenhouse. So benches is what greenhouse shelving is called. I'm not quite sure why, but greenhouse benches are for your plants to sit on, not for people to sit on. They're constructed of wood and metal, sometimes a combination of both. But one of the important things is you needs to be sturdy enough to hold plants, and then it needs to allow water and soil to pass through. Raised beds are another option for greenhouses. And you can also even just have in-ground planting beds in your greenhouses. I've seen tomatoes grown very successfully, basically inside a greenhouse and in the ground. Okay, you've got your plants in. You want to make sure that they stay alive. So heaters, even a cool greenhouse may need some heat to keep temps above freezing. That can be as simple as just a little utility fan with a blower. You can have solar masts to keep it warm. And if you've got a space where you want to keep it particularly warm, you might need 220 volt to provide those higher temperatures. Conventional fan force heater will circulate and heat up the whole room with the majority of the heat lost through the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. So you've got electric, you've got a gas line, you can also do propane. I've even seen some wood stoves and pellet stoves to heat a greenhouse. So lots of things to think about. The important thing is that you want it to be controlled by a thermostat so that it comes on at a particular temperature that you decide. And you place it low so that heat rises through convection, so that it's going to go up because, heat goes up anyway. So place it low so that your forced air can go through the greenhouse. As it rises, it can warm things up. Keep an auxiliary fan going at all times to help disperse and move the heat around. So infrared heaters are another way to heat a greenhouse. And basically they work so that they heat the plants, not the air. And they're best mounted overhead so that the heat rays can blanket your growing area. The infrared greenhouse heater will apply warmth directly to the plants with very minimal heat lost through the walls. Effectively, infrared heaters are more efficient at applying heat to plants. The initial setup costs can be expensive, and radiant heat units must be placed so that no cold spots occur in the greenhouse. But because less energy is wasted heating the entire air volume of the greenhouse, radiant heating units may reduce heating costs by 30 to 50%. If you've ever sat on an outside patio on a cold night and there's heat overhead from the restaurant or something, that's a radiant heat. Another way to heat a greenhouse is solar heat. Now you can build a passive solar greenhouse where you've got the north wall and the floor, everything basically insulated, and then faced with materials that are going to collect heat and keep things warm. So that would be a stone or some type of masonry floor. The wall can be lined with things like black painted barrels, which hold water, and they're really good at releasing heat throughout the night to keep things warm. A passive solar greenhouse versus a conventional greenhouse, 100% of the solar heat absorbed is kept in the house. The conventional greenhouse, less than 50% of the solar heat absorbed is basically usable throughout the night. If you don't have necessarily this passive solar system, you can also add things like 30 to 50 gallon barrels painted black, 1 to 5 gallon jugs lined up, crates filled with rocks, a stone floor, concrete masonry. All of these things add to your passive solar heating. You're going to need water. Ideally, you will have a hose and a sink and a watering can. Now, the watering can is important because in the wintertime, if you're trying to start seedlings, you don't want to use super cold water. Tepid water, at least, 80, 70, 80 degrees is nice for the plants so they don't go into shock. A drip system is a really handy thing to have, especially in the summertime. If you've got plants growing and you want to keep them hydrated, you can set a drip system on a timer and check to make sure that your plants are getting the appropriate moisture. A rain barrel is another way to have water to a greenhouse. And you can just basically hook up a hose and use that for your irrigation. Monitoring the greenhouse temperatures is really important because you need to know what's going on and you're not there 24/7. So a min-max thermometer is really good because it will tell you in the past 24 hours how hot it got and how cold it got. You can also step it up and go with an automated system of, a thermometer that basically talks to your phone and will send you alerts as to what the temperatures are if they pass a certain level that you've set. So that's really handy. You don't have to go check the greenhouse to make sure what the temperatures have been. A lot of the systems like ventilation fans, heaters, cooling system can all be controlled by basically a greenhouse controller. And it can regulate the temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels all in one unit. So everything plugs into that. So it's kind of an automated system, a bit of overkill for most hobby greenhouses, but just want you to know it's out there. Keeping the heat, double glazing. So you can order your greenhouse often with basically double glazing. So you've got two layers and then an air gap in between. If it's really cold, you can use insulation blankets like fleece and felt or bubble wrap. When I say bubble wrap, I'm not talking about the kind of things that you get wrapped up in your package. This is basically designed for greenhouse. It's a horticultural product, has a much larger bubble than that for packaging. It's made with thicker material, and it's treated with a UV protectant for longer life. You want to caulk all of the air leaks around your doors and your vents. Cover your insulation fan, or I'm sorry, ventilation fans with cardboard, or they're using here a silver bubble wrap kind of material to prevent air leakage. So you're keeping all of this nice and warm. And I'm telling you, don't forget the fan. You're like, well, why am I keeping it warm and then I'm putting a fan in it? The winter time is one of the most important times of the year to have your fan going because it's humid, it's dank, it's dark, and you want to keep the air moving. It helps prevent mold. It evens out the temperature that you have. So fans in the greenhouse are really important. As long as there's plants in there, your fan should be going. Keeping it cool. So you've got your ways to keep it warm in the wintertime, but then in the summertime, it gets really hot. And there are several ways that you can passively keep it cool. The first thing is roof vents. So you have a vent that allows the hot air to escape the greenhouse. This little thing here is an automated roof vent opener. It takes no electricity. It works automatically, and it basically has a wax inside of a tube with a piston in it. And as the wax gets hotter, the piston gets longer and it raises the vent here. Shade cloth is another thing that often, if you buy a kit, they will sell the shade cloth that go with it. And it comes in varying different amounts of shade provided. So depending on how hot you are, like someone from Texas in the flat plains is going to have greenhouse needing to keep the temperature cooler, more to fight than someone maybe in the northern climates. So you can adjust your greenhouse shading to that. Keeping the floors damping down the floors is another great way to cool your greenhouse in the summertime because as the water evaporates, it cools the air, and that's an easy, no-cost thing to do. The mechanical ways of keeping it cool is to have a vent fan, and those are usually put on an automated thermostat so that when it gets to a certain degree, they kick on. And in some cases, evaporative cooler is necessary. Those are just mechanical options for that. Lighting is another big question that people have about greenhouses and basically getting the optimum for your plants. So let's take a look at the different light temperatures. Red light, that's in this area here, plays a vital role in plant growth as it's a major driver of photosynthesis and overall development. Blue light, this section over here, is one of the most important spectra for plant growth and development. It's characterized by short wavelength and high energy. Blue light stimulates the production of chlorophyll, and it plays a vital role in leaf development and stem elongation. So it helps plants also establish strong and healthy root systems. Green light, in here, the 5,000 to 4,000 Kelvin, takes part in regulating plant architecture by promoting the growth of shoots and inhibiting root growth. So if you've got a hydroponic system, you kind of want to focus on this area because you don't want too many roots. So when you go to get a greenhouse LED light, they have two choices. There's full spectrum and the broad spectrum. And the broad spectrum is more favorable because see how you've got the dips in some of this area here? The broad spectrum basically evens out the light throughout. So that's a good option. Some of the helpful tools for a greenhouse, watering can, we've talked about why, hoses, of course. The potting tray is something that I just had not even heard of or thought of, and it's a really good thing. It's basically like a 2x2. So you put your plants and your soil in there, and it keeps everything kind of tidy rather than spreading it all over the greenhouse. You're going to want containers to keep things in. Your seed trays, of course, if you're going to be starting seeds. Heat mats are great for starting seeds. And also if you've got a particular cold snap and you've got plants that you're trying to keep in from freezing, putting that around their roots is a really good option as well. So there's dual uses there. Why do I have the cat there? Cats like heat mats a lot. And you know how they need when they're getting ready to lay down, and their claws can basically make the greenhouse, the mat short. So you get an electric shock when you pick it up. So just be aware of that if you've got a cat that loves being in the greenhouse. Now there's critters in the greenhouse. Mice love warm greenhouses in winter. One of the ways to stop that is to put hardware cloth in the foundation and seal up all the holes in the fall so that they can't get in. If you see ants, it often means you not only have ants, but an aphid or a whitefly problem. So if you see ants, check for other pests. And then there's whiteflies, aphids, strips, mites, all the things that are just annoying to have around. So what do you do about it? First solution is vigilance, is solve a problem before it takes over. So be constantly checking your greenhouse for infestation of mice, ants, or other things that you don't want to have in there. Hardware cloth and seal up the entry points. Yellow sticky traps are a really great way to have spread around the greenhouse so you can kind of see, oh, look, something's coming in, and you can attack it right at the beginning. Putting screens on your windows and your doors helps keep pests out. And then, as always, use integrated pest management. And we're going to have a really good webinar on that in April 16th, I think, about how to manage pests. Oh, I have this picture of the orchid blossom with the ladybug on it, because this was a 4x4 orchid, a huge thing in the greenhouse, and went away for the weekend, came back and had aphids all over it. So I grabbed some ladybugs that I happen to have in the fridge, put out some wetted things down so that they could hydrate themselves when they came out. And I put them out that evening, came back, and by the noon the next day, almost all of the aphids were gone. They'd had a feast. So it's kind of a fun way. And if you've got a greenhouse, they're more likely to stay around than when you just put them out in your yard. Maintenance is a must. So every fall, as you're getting ready to go into the winter, it's a perfect time to put on your calendar to maintain the greenhouse. You're going to want to wash your glass, clean water, non-abrasive detergent. And then if you've got polycarbonate or acrylic, you're going to wash the panels again with mild soap, lukewarm water. Don't use a disinfectant. You're going to want to caulk any air leaks that you got. Use a high-grade silicone sealant. Check your polyfilm to see how sturdy it still is. Greenhouse grade plastic, it has a 3 to 4 year lifetime. So you might want to, if you try and extend the life beyond that, you may be putting your plants at risk. And replacement also improves light transmission. If you've got shade cloth on, you want to clean it in the fall and fold it up, and test your heaters and thermostats before winter hits, because you don't want to be in a snowstorm and have everything fail. Greenhouse is a wet location, so use outdoor materials and furniture, and equipment and lighting should be designed to handle moisture and water. Now we're going to go into the story of the 3 greenhouses. The first one this is Dee Lind, and she's a master gardener here in Clackamas County. And she has a 20 by 20 hoop house with a steel frame. She heats it with propane. She's got polyfilm in a double layer. So she's got one layer of poly outside and another one inside, and it's inflated with a small fan that keeps that separation and good thermal control. The floor is landscape fabric over gravel, and the benches are wood legs with steel tops. And this is how it was made. She did it with her family and friends. So this was a do-it-yourself project. They did have to rent things like a post hole digger, a backhoe, and a trencher, because this is a pretty big structure. You can see the polyfilm going up with the gaps in between. This is it almost finished. And then this is the first year that it was up in the winter, and they had a big snowstorm and a freeze, and the power went out, so the fan went out. It was kind of a scary situation. And the next year they installed a generator to keep everything going in the worst of weather. So this is an all-year greenhouse. I took this picture in December of her greenhouse. You can see she's got the ventilation fan. Here's the propane heater, and then all of the plants that she's got growing in the greenhouse. She really loves succulents, and the abutilon is beautiful. In the spring, she does starts, vegetable starts and flower starts. And in the summer, she's got beautiful tomatoes, strawberries growing. And again, the abutilon is so pretty. And in the summer, you can raise the polyfilm, so you get good air insulation or movement. And then also the louvered doors are open. Windows, not doors. This is Jane. Jane is going to be giving our talk next week on blueberries, so you want to be sure and catch that. Her greenhouse is aluminum. The glazing is glass. It's 8 by 14. She has just a programmable space heater, so it's basically a cool greenhouse. The roof has automatic vent openers. She's got a fan going 24/7 whenever the plants are present. And the floor is pavers over gravel. She started with gravel and it got annoying and messy, so she put pavers over it. And she uses it for seed starting. And let me show you what she gets. So this is basically her greenhouse in the spring, and she's got her seeds started. This is what Jane's garden looks like in the fall. This was August, actually. So just think of the money she saved by starting her own seeds for all of these beautiful, beautiful plants, vegetables, and flowers. The last one we're going to look at is Kathy's greenhouse. And if you've ever been to the Spring Garden Fair and you've heard the announcement, that was Kathy Cardinelli talking to you over at the Spring Garden Fair. This is a wood frame greenhouse. It's made out of redwood. It's 14 by 14. And she has glass walls and a twin wall polycarbonate roof. The heat is a programmable electric space heater. Again, this is a cool house, so she's just basically keeping things not freezing. She's got good ventilation with roof vents and an automatic vent openers, louvered windows, ceiling fan. Not many greenhouses can have a ceiling fan, but hers is very tall, so she can get away with it. And she's got the circulation fans. She uses this as a tender plant protection, a potting area, and then she's got some lovely little seating areas in there as well. So this is her greenhouse in the summer, keeping it cool. She's got roof vents with automatic vent openers. There's the shade cloth, the louvered windows, and then she made interior shades with shade cloth that she bought at a hardware store, and made her own shades to keep that sun a little bit away from the inside. because she does use it as a place for people as well. This is her greenhouse in the winter. Now, snow isn't really common in our area, but it does come. And this steep pitch really helps get rid of the snow and makes it much safer. And then you can see the circulation fan that she has going. It goes even in winter. This is her winter greenhouse where she's got beautiful lemons, limes, oranges, succulents, ferns, begonias, just lovely. So we've gone through the different types of things you need to look at before you build and what kind of structure you're going to have, how your utilities are going to get there. We've gone through several different accessories and then looked at 3 different ones, and then also your maintenance and upkeep. So when you're thinking about having a greenhouse, there's so many things to consider. But it can be a really joyful thing to have and really extend your gardening. Here's a list of the resources that you will be getting, and we will be taking questions and answers right now.
Well, that was amazing. Thanks so much,
Oh,
Leah.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I learned a lot of things about greenhouses. And we have a few interesting questions.
Okay.
The first one is, how do plants which require bees to get pollinated in a greenhouse? How does one deal with that?
A very good question. So a couple of things. One of the things that when we talked about pests and not getting into the greenhouse, you want to have your window screens, and if you've got doors open, you want to have those screens so bees are not going to be able to get in. So the way to pollinate those kinds of plants is to either shake it so that the pollen disperses, or you can take like a soft brush, paint brush, a Q-tip, and basically hand pollinate each one of those. I've used the shake method a lot and it works pretty well, but if I'm not getting the fruit forming that I want, I'll move to the basically hand pollination. Labor intensive, but it works.
And with that method, you're also avoiding infestations, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And there were some questions on infestations. Sounds like prevention is the best, but what happens if you do need to get rid of pests that have made their way into the garden, into the greenhouse, and are causing problems?
Again, basically go to the integrated pest management where you're going to do the least toxic thing first. So if it's things like aphids, you're going to basically squish them with your hands, use ladybugs, lacewings, that kind of thing. Other things like whiteflies, it's like get it when you can, but we will be look up integrated pest management. We have that on our 10-minute university videos, and there's handouts on that. So you can see what things will work least toxic, and then if you've got a real problem, going down the line that way.
All right. I think that sounds like good advice, especially since there's so many different pests that it needs to be addressed individually.
Yes.
So going to resources and finding that it's great advice. Thanks.
Again, that's at our 10-minute university website, cmastergardeners.org. If you go to 10-minute university, you can get handouts, and we've got some really good videos on managing pests.
And I think we have also a webinar coming up later in our season.
I think it's April 16th.
Yeah.
April 16th, I think.
All right. Another question that I saw come up over and over again, and I know this might be a little tricky, but what is too hot in a greenhouse? What is too hot?
So basically, most plants can handle the heat. The big problem that you want to avoid is getting them too dehydrated. And also with things like tomatoes and peppers, they stop setting fruit when it's too hot. So if your greenhouse is getting over 90 degrees and you're trying to set fruit, you're going to want to take some actions. Again, shade cloth is a really good way to do it. You can have one custom made for your greenhouse. In an emergency, I bought shade cloth from a big box store and just draped it over the top. So that's a good way. And again, damping the system down and then keeping as much ventilation, as much air as you can going through it.
Awesome. Awesome. One little comment from me, when I'm helping people set up raised beds, I use a free app, which is called Sun Tracker. And so that might be something that people could access if they're in the process of locating a position for a greenhouse. So that
Yes.
Sun Tracker, and it's a free app. All right. Well, that is all the questions that I had. The questions were coming in and being answered by our
wonderful
team.
helpers.
Yep. You know what? One just came in, and I'm not sure if we talked about this directly, is how do you attach shade cloth to a greenhouse?
That's a very good question. If you buy one like with a kit, they often come with, they've got grommets on them, and then you hook them over screws or something that the greenhouse company has provided to hook the greenhouse on. When I had to basically jerry rig my own in an emergency, that was actually the year that we had that heat dome and it was 115 degrees, yeah. So basically I just stretched it over the greenhouse and tied it off wherever I could, but wind wasn't really a problem. So that's what I did there.
Okay. And then the last minute question is, how early can we safely start seeds in a cool house? What would be some of the quantitative data that you'd want to have in order to be able to answer that?
Well, you can always go to a seed starting guy and say, 6 weeks before the frost, you can do that. I will tell you, I have started tomato seeds in January, late January, and had them work really well. I've also started peppers, and I have a cute story to tell. I planted 100 different pepper seedlings and they were just coming up. We had this big thing going at the company I was working at. What kind of peppers? How hot can it be? So we were going to plant a lot of them and see what we all liked. And they were just coming up. They were starting their real leaves. And I went in one day and all 100 of them had just been eaten. Doop, 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 doop. And mice had gotten in. And I was hoping that some of those leaves were hot enough that it caused them some indigestion. But that's another reason about, making sure that you've got things sealed up. So basically, if you've got a heat map and you've got a light, you can start seeds at any time.
Okay. All right. And with that, it is 1 o'clock and we try to keep to our 60-minute limit. It speeds by when it's a new topic. Lots of people thanking you for a lot of good information. And just thanks so much, Leah.
Thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful to be talking about one of my favorite things.